Welcome to Square Notes, the Sacred Music Podcast. Your chance to learn about the teachings of the Catholic Church on sacred music, both in theory and practice. Through interviews, discussions, and music, your hearts and minds will be lifted up and better understand what it means to sing the praise of His glory. And now, your host, Dr. Jennifer Donaldson-Nowicka.
Hello, listeners, and welcome to Square Notes, the Sacred Music Podcast and the official podcast of the Catholic Institute of Sacred Music. I'm joined today by Dr. Alexis Kutarna, who is the head of school at the Ordinariate's Cathedral High School in Houston, Texas. She joins me today to talk about the music curriculum at the school, how they structure it, train the students, make all the pieces come together for a daily sung mass, and form the students through the study of sacred art and music. Before we get into the interview, I want to invite you to apply for the Choral Institute this summer, July 7th through the 11th, one of our 9 graduate courses at the Catholic Institute of Sacred Music. Each day of the week, we sing lauds, mass, and vespers in Gregorian chant, alongside 2 polyphonic motets per day, 3 Gregorian ordinaries throughout the week, and 2 polyphonic ordinaries throughout the week. These immersive experiences are buttressed by rehearsals to prepare the music, as well as sessions in which you'll learn how to run a really great rehearsal, teach group vocal technique, and develop your singer's musicianship and sight reading. There are plenty of opportunities for fellowship and fun on our beautiful campus of St. Patrick's Seminary here in Menlo Park, and we also spend some time during the week workshopping the compositions of the 5 composers competitively selected to study that week with Dr. Frank LaRocca in the composition seminar. 2 short audition recordings are required, one of your line in Sicut Cervus and the other of the Introit Salve Sancta Parens. If you're looking for an amazing opportunity to immerse yourself in the Church's sacred music and liturgy, we encourage you to apply. More information is available at catholicinstituteofsacredmusic.org. Click on summer classes. The deadline to apply is May 1st. Don't wait. And now, on to the interview. It's a real pleasure to have you on the show today, Alexis. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks so much, Jenny, for having me.
Can you tell us a little bit about the origins of the Cathedral High School and its link to the Ordinariate?
Yes, absolutely. So not long after Bishop Lopes was ordained a bishop, he was on retreat and he had this vision for how Catholic culture might be promoted among the young, especially within the context of the Ordinariate. There are a lot of movements of liberal arts or classical colleges, Catholic universities who are aiming to recapture some aspects of Catholic culture, rebuild Catholic culture, if you will. And he thought for a long time about how this might be possible among the teenagers of the Ordinariate. How can we hand on a particular gift that has been received in English Christianity to the next generation? And so this was the beginning, the seed of what would then become Cathedral High School. And so in the Ordinariate here at the Cathedral of Our Lady of Walsingham in Houston, what was begun was a feasibility study. And after the feasibility study, then of course a financial study and a curriculum committee, starting in about, I think it was 2017 or 2018, was when we founded a curriculum committee to discuss what it would mean to have a high school that considered daily mass first, this rich education in the tradition of the liberal arts, as well as sacred art and sacred music. And so after that, the building process began. The beautiful gift, of course, was that our curriculum committee met with our architects so that we could have a building designed around the curriculum rather than kind of a random box of a school that you fit the curriculum into. And in August of 2022, we opened our doors to our first class.
So one of the reasons I wanted to have you on the show is because I think what you're building there is aspirational for so many people. That they can look at, the building where you are, the curriculum, and its integration with liturgical life and the music there as something that really resonates with their idea of what truly Catholic education is. So I'm wondering if you could tell me a little bit about beauty and excellence and how it pervades the choice of curriculum and even the building itself.
One of the most beautiful parts of this journey has been the emphasis on sacred beauty as formative for our students. So each day when we begin the school day with the celebration of Mass, the students are in a beautiful cathedral church. And this is reflective, of course, of that transcending power, that transcending call to our students to come to know the truth, to come to know Jesus Christ. And beauty is the attractive power of the truth. So when the students are contemplating our Lord in a beautiful cathedral building, and they are witnessing and participating in dignified, carefully prepared sacred rites and listening to beautiful music. And then they proceed not only from a beautiful cathedral building, but now into a school that reflects the dignity of what we're doing here every day. They walk through an arch on the backside of the school that says Cor ad Cor Loquitur on it, John Henry Newman's motto. And this is etched into the stone archway on the exterior of the building. And the students are walking towards this building. Some people say it looks a little bit like a castle that they're walking into, but it says that we're doing something that's important here. It says that the students are engaged in something that is significant, that the building itself reflects the dignity of each of the undertakings in the day. And so one of the neat parts of the building is the end of the building where our commons, our library, is situated. The library is at the end of the building as the only part of the building that actually has exterior buttresses on it. And the idea behind that is that the library, the commons where the students gather and they talk about great things, is reflective of sacred wisdom. It embodies that particular pillar of sacred wisdom, and it's holding up the whole rest of the school. So all of the other things that we undertake each day are supported and held up by this pillar of sacred wisdom. And this forms our students, right? They are used to not going just to a building that is nondescript. It could be used for anything else, but they are formed by the beauty of even the architecture itself every single day.
So let's talk a little bit about the centrality of worship in the life of the school, and both theologically and in terms of how it shapes curriculum, but also like what does that mean in terms of your daily schedule?
Right, that's a great question, because oftentimes people think, how can you have both daily Mass and then this rich, rigorous intellectual life here? And we don't see that there's any kind of dichotomy between the two. Every morning, we begin with the celebration of Mass as a whole school community at 8:05 in the morning after we gather for a brief homeroom period. And this is fundamental to beginning our day, not just because maybe we have a softer start or an easier start to the day. The students are not taking a test at 8 o'clock in the morning, so I'm sure that they're happy about that. But the students are happy to run over to the church, right? The young men run over and are hoping that we can have more incense today, every single day when they run to the vestry to prepare for serving at Mass. And it cultivates a particular rhythm in the course of the life of the school day, in the course of the life of the school. This is a rhythm that's founded first and foremost upon worship. And so we celebrate solemnities even in a particular way. The whole of the day begins in worship and then is punctuated by moments of prayer. Every month, the students sing solemn choral evensong together. And this rhythm of the liturgy of the hours becomes a part of the life of the school as well. We celebrate the richness of the liturgical calendar here. And so on solemnities, we actually don't even have class. We celebrate those days not as holidays, but as a day to truly set aside to feast with the Lord. We call them solemnity schedules. And so we have time for long Mass, of course, right? We can sing more and we can have a more full procession and incense and all of those other beautiful things in terms of the Mass in the morning. But then we take the time to observe that particular solemnity in a particular way. We have a family guild who is responsible for a lot of our parent support of the life of the school. And members of our family guild prepare liturgical treats for those particular solemnities, which the students, of course, love. And then we look for a particular project, study, trip for the students to do that corresponds with that day. So one of my favorite examples was in December. On the Solemnity of the Immaculate Conception, we took a field trip for most of the day where we visited Marian churches around the city of Houston. And we took our architect, the architect of Cathedral High School, with us. And so he gave an architectural explanation of the different historic Marian churches in the Houston area. The students had time for prayer and contemplation. They also sketched some of the sacred architecture that they were seeing around them, and had a different focus for their day. So instead of sitting in class with a normal schedule, okay, we had a longer mass in the morning, we've reserved this day for a particular kind of feasting. So every solemnity, we have a beautiful schedule like that.
That's so great. I mean, it just sets them up for a pattern of really forming their entire lives in the future around the liturgical schedule as well.
Yes, yes, yeah.
And and I think one of the most important aspects of truly Catholic education is centering things on worship and not just making it like something else that you try to stuff into a schedule. That
Mhm.
there's really a focus that is leisurely as well as formational for the whole of life.
Absolutely. That's actually another part of our schedule that I wanted to mention, a practical part, is that once a month, especially when we are around particular times of the year, like the Easter mysteries, that we designate certain weekends that we call leisure for culture weekends. And the idea is that we don't assign a whole bunch of homework over the weekend. The students might have some reading, but that's it. There's no test on Monday when they come back from these weekends, sometimes on a long weekend. The idea is the family has time set apart to truly build culture, to engage in activities of true leisure, not just sitting around and hanging out on a long weekend, but contemplation, time to go out into nature, to watch a great film, to read, but ultimately to engage in that highest form of leisure, which is worship.
Yeah, we'll get to the music curriculum a little bit later, but in so many Catholic schools build their music programs around like a Christmas concert and an Easter program. And it's so impoverished, and it doesn't infuse the curriculum in any really coherent sort of way. And, if you were, let's say that you were put in charge of a school that had that sort of like focus, one thing in the fall and one thing in the spring and concerts as the focus of a music program. What would you say are some of the first things you would do to transform it into a more organic and formative model?
I think that's a great question. The first place, even if you preserve that idea of a fall and spring concert, the first place I would look to is a particular liturgical theme. So if it could be found near a liturgical day, you might now have material for the content of that particular day. If you had something near the beginning of May for your spring concert, you could associate it with a May crowning and then find Marian music to surround it with. The other thing that I hope that music educators can look towards is the liturgy of the hours in particular. And so if you have an Advent pre-Christmas concert, to preserve the liturgy of the Advent season, you might even consider Vespers. Even with young students, this is something that we did at my previous school. We had an Advent Vespers. And so we were able to incorporate the beloved carols of the Advent season, but also to build that event around the liturgical life rather than to build it around something that is not associated with a Catholic school at all, a Disney concert or something else like that, which can be fun, but is not the pinnacle of what we're called to do as Catholic educators.
Right.
And so here, that's been very important in building our curriculum. The music curriculum is liturgically focused, but even the sacred art curriculum is liturgically focused. The particular media that we use in art that our students study all come from contemplation of the church building. How do we think about iconography? How do we think about stained glass? Would our students be capable of creating their own stained glass in the future? And that was the origin of the question of how we would build our sacred art curriculum as well.
Right. So, right before we get into curriculum, let's talk a little bit
Mhm.
more about the school having been founded on the four pillars of the Ordinariate patrimony. Could you tell us what those pillars are and how it integrates?
Yes. So the first pillar is sacred worship. Essentially, that daily mass is primary in everything that we do, but also the whole of the sacramental life. So our students have access to regular confession, to the liturgy of the hours, and to the celebration of the liturgical year lived out in the life of the school community. The second pillar is the pillar of sacred wisdom. And so this pillar encompasses the whole of the human person. This is your classical curriculum, your 7 liberal arts, but also physical education and athletics. We want to build up the whole of the human person, body, mind, and spirit. And then our other 2 pillars are sacred art and sacred music. Sometimes it surprises people that these pillars are included as required for all students. So art and music in the Ordinariate tradition are not considered electives, but they are considered part of the core. And this is essential to immersing the students in the participation in co-creation with the Lord, co-creation of beauty in terms of the visual arts, as well as forming their mind and hearts in sacred music.
So let's talk about now music curriculum, because all of our
Mhm.
listeners are really interested in the nuts and bolts of that. What does it look like for students in each grade?
So the foundational part of our music curriculum is that each student is going to participate in the sung liturgy. In the simplest form, that is a choral education for every single one of our students. We want them to learn how to participate effectively in the choral singing of the Mass and of the office in solemn choral evensong. And so there is a vocal education that is happening for our students, but also the focus on the student becoming literate in music. So every one of our students is studying music theory, they are studying sight singing, and they are studying music history because there is a context to what we are singing. Each student will experience a variety of repertoires during their time here that form both the Roman tradition, but also what we would call the English tradition, or part of the English patrimony of what we receive in the Ordinariate. So the students learn to sing Gregorian chant. They also learn to sing Anglican chant, and they sing basically everything in between that's written in Latin or English in the choral tradition. This doesn't mean we only sing music in the sacred liturgy, but that is certainly the central part of the music curriculum for every student. It's similar across grade levels, but a gradual deepening for each of our students.
And what grades are at Cathedral High School?
So this year we have 9th through 11th grade. Our oldest
Okay.
students are juniors right now, and next year they will be our first senior class. So pray
And
for that.
what classes do they take throughout the day to be able to accomplish this learning?
Each student is enrolled in a class: Sacred Music 1, Sacred Music 2, Sacred Music 3, Sacred Music 4. And that class's curriculum is based upon a graduated progression into music theory, into sight singing. They spend a lot of time in solfege and in ear training, so that the students are able to pick up new music more quickly, but also progressing in terms of the difficulty level of what they are singing. So,
And how long is the class each
oh yes,
day?
the classes last 45 minutes and happen 4 times a week. Some of the classes are combined together. So for instance, you might have sophomore and junior girls all together, and freshmen men and women separated. It's simpler in some ways, and maybe that's just the social context of the situation, to work with freshman boys on their own and freshman girls on their own. And that's that's an acknowledgement that we make here, especially in a co-ed school. A freshman gentleman that comes in and not having sung before might be uncomfortable singing in front of the ladies. And so we do separate by sex in our singing classes. And so every week, every student receives 180 minutes of music education. And that's apart from how much they're rehearsing before school or before evensong.
Right. And what do you do to support a student who has a tough time matching pitch or finding their singing voice?
That's an excellent question, and that happens. It is a lower percentage of students, but it definitely happens. Each student is evaluated individually by our director of sacred music, Mrs. Murray, Some students are able to progress with individual attention from Mrs. Murray. We do have a flex period in the middle of the day that we call practicum. And so students might come to additional singing lessons or time doing solfege exercises during practicum. She also hosts a polyphony club for the students who want to sing more polyphony than that they're already singing in class. But sometimes we do identify that a student needs an additional teacher outside of school. And so this is a conversation with the director of sacred music and with the family and the student. And we've engaged and hired on during the school day or even during that music class as a pullout for that student to be able to have their own individual voice teacher. Oftentimes it is simply to overcome those first steps in learning how to sing with a group.
Right. And so on the other end of the spectrum, what do you do to support the students who are really advanced and want concentrated study in music?
We do offer lessons for our students here as part of a conservatory program. So we do have students who take lessons in voice, organ, violin, piano, flute, and we would offer more if there were requests for more. We just received our practice organ in the school a few weeks ago, and we're delighted because we have a high school student who is already playing organ at Mass. On the campus with our homeschool enrichment program, I think that's now 10 teenage organ students that are present just each week here at the Cathedral, which is a beautiful thing. We have a number of practice organs because there's not enough time on the Cathedral organ every single week for these students. So a student has that opportunity. They also have the opportunity to engage in music festivals to be prepared for that. A couple of weeks ago, we sent an octet to the Junior Classical League area competition, and that octet chose to sing Bruckner's Locus Iste. And they won the ensemble category with a perfect score. And so now they qualify for state. So if a student wants to do something extra like that, they're more than welcome to. And it's also a beautiful gift of Mrs. Murray to offer that polyphony club each week for the students who want to, just come in and sight read some Sicut Cerevus because you feel like that on a Thursday at 12:30.
And you mentioned a homeschool enrichment group, and how does that integrate with the Cathedral High School? Are they able to participate in like if a homeschool family wanted to be part of the music curriculum, or is it how does that work?
So Cathedral High School and Holy House Academy, that's the name of the homeschool enrichment program, are separate but complementary initiatives in the life of the Cathedral. Holy House Academy offers a complete set of music courses for their students as well. And they have a large high school choir, as well as a treble choir program that students can enroll in, as well as theory classes and other supplemental lessons that a family might choose for their child that they're homeschooling. Our two programs do integrate at times. Last year, we took a combined road trip to go visit our sister school in San Antonio, Atonement Catholic Academy. And we took the Cathedral High School students, we took the Holy House High School age choir, about 80 students all together, and we drove to San Antonio, sang at one of the mission churches, and then went to Atonement. We had a basketball game. All of our singers played basketball against each other, watched a movie, and then the next day we had a choral festival, and the students all sang together Stainer's Crucifixion.
Oh,
so it's fun that they can come together and do something like that.
yeah. Also amazing that they have gross motor functions to play basketball. Just kidding. Could you talk a little bit about what the foundational repertoire is for the choirs at the school? What are they learning in that 180 minutes a week?
One of the priorities that we made the very first year of the music curriculum was to list what would be that essential repertoire that we would want a Cathedral High School student to graduate with. And we worked backwards from that point. How many composers would we want them to be exposed to? What kind of liturgical music should they be able to sing? And now how do we reduce that down to the freshman level where we have students coming in who've experienced some of this and sung some of this before, and then half the students who've never sung in a choir in their life. And so it begins with an entry into simple chant. We do use every day for the liturgy the Anglican use gradual. So those are simple psalm tone propers in English. And the students begin with entry at that point, progressing to full Gregorian propers, especially for our solemnities. And so they sing everything in between in terms of chant. They chant in English and chant in Latin. What are the chant hymns that they should know before they leave? We made a list of those. But then also the question of how do we progress from over, more than 1,000 years, 1,500 years of musical history in the Roman Rite. Every student will learn hymns contained in the hymnal. We're excited that we'll be having a new hymnal come out for the Ordinariate in this next year. The students learn how to sing hymn, so they sing hymnody in English in parts, Latin chant hymnody. They also will learn music of the English choral tradition. So every student will sing Tallis and Bird, and they will sing Vaughan Williams. And I'm going to forget people that I should be listing off the top of my head, but we made a whole list of the curriculum of that, everybody should have the experience of singing the great evening services in the English choral tradition, as well as polyphony from the Renaissance forward. So we're not just looking at music of the English tradition, but we're looking at music that has influenced the whole of the Roman Rite in the last more than 1,000 years. And so every student will have an immersion into all of those elements of liturgical repertoire, as well as studying larger works. Right. Last year, because this is very new in the life of our school, that's why we had chosen the Stainer to work on altogether. It's easily accomplishable by the average parish choir who works hard on that particular work. And so they had the experience of singing a longer major work. And as our student body grows and our curriculum grows, then students will be immersed in a major work every year in that way. So, up in the future will be something like the Fauré Requiem next, and works like that.
Right. And you mentioned, the opportunity to study, for example, instruments, including organ, but are there other opportunities for students to develop musical leadership? Because this is such an important part of choir school tradition, but also the future of the church.
Yes, and so I would say that exists in two ways. So one is in terms of cantering in the liturgy, right? So being the one who begins the chants. Students aren't required to do that earlier in their life here. We're not going to single them out and ask somebody who's very uncomfortable with that to do that, but we build that level of ability and comfort. And one of the beautiful things actually last month at Evensong was the students were singing an alternatum Magnificat between a psalm tone and a faubourdon. And several students that I had never heard intone a chant had their own verse of the Magnificat. They had their own portion that suddenly they sang by themselves. And I spoke with a few of them afterwards. I said, that was beautiful. I'd never heard you do that alone in the liturgy before. One of the students said, that's the most terrifying thing I've ever done. But it does help to draw them outside of themselves. It's not to make them uncomfortable, but there is that we want them to grow. And so we do have to ask them to try to come outside of what might trap them. And that's an area where every student can grow, not just musically, but artistically, mathematically, in terms of poetry and literature in our seminars, that they are asked to come a little bit outside of themselves and try something new. So that's one of the areas that I would particularly highlight, is that introduction to simply intoning something alone. But the other is in cultivating small ensembles and bringing people together. And so that ensemble that sang at the competition, that octet, that was student-led. And so Mrs. Murray worked with them, but ultimately at the competition, one of the students directed the rest of the students. And so there's an opportunity for the student to grow in the beginning stages of conducting, in helping all of their peers find their pitches and having to lead in a competition situation, even like that.
Yeah. Go to the summit. Join us this summer, July 1st through the 4th, 2025, at St. Patrick's Seminary in Menlo Park, California, for the Fons et Coulmen Sacred Liturgy Summit. The summit gathers Catholics who love Christ, the Church, and the Church's sacred liturgical tradition for the solemn celebration of the Mass and Vespers, insightful talks on the sacred liturgy, liturgical formation, and the sacred liturgical arts, and fellowship to build fraternal bonds through which the clergy, religious, and lay faithful can support the Church and one another in their promotion of the sacred liturgy. Speakers and celebrants include Cardinals Sarah, Ranjith, and O'Malley, as well as Archbishop Cordileone, Abbot Benedict from the monks in Norcia, and many others. You'll have a chance not only to assist at the sacred liturgy and hear wonderful speakers, but designed to foster conversation amongst attendees and speakers, the summit's schedule features time for shared meals and conversational fora. The fora, moderated by conference hosts, will engage participants, prelates, and clergy in attendance, and summit speakers in discussion about the practicalities of the promotion of the sacred liturgy and liturgical formation in their parishes and schools. Music for the liturgy will be provided by the Catholic Institute of Sacred Music, featuring an all-professional choir from around the country, directed by Professor Christopher Berry and me, Dr. Jennifer Donaldson-Novitska, the director of the Catholic Institute of Sacred Music, and with the assistance of organist Dr. Aaron James. Affordable housing in the area is available, and the conference registration fee includes many meals. More information is available at liturgysummit.org. Don't miss out on this amazing opportunity to be inspired and empowered to promote beautiful sacred liturgy in your area. The summit awaits you. liturgysummit.org. Could you talk a little bit about how the study of music integrates with things like theology, Latin, theater, sacred art?
This is essential, actually, to our curriculum here. In the first year, sometimes we had the students say, "Did you talk to each other? Did the faculty talk to each other about this? Because you gave us this chant today, and we already translated it in Latin class earlier today." And as a teacher, sometimes you say, "No, I didn't do anything. She must just have known." But really, we do. We do talk to each other so that, as a new Marian antiphon comes up throughout the year, that the students are already prepared for it. They can never say, "I don't know what this means," because every student studies Latin here. And so our Latin teacher will use liturgical texts, and will use texts that are being sung as the material for translation in class, or for the introduction of a new particular element of grammar that she wishes to introduce. In the history classes, this is an interesting question because we do an integrated humanities curriculum here. So history, literature, and philosophy are taught in a single double class called Catholic Culture. And that class is a historical study. It runs basically the whole course of salvation history, beginning with the ancient world, all the way through in the senior year to the modern day. And the students are reading works like the Iliad and the Odyssey in their first year, and the Aeneid. So one of the points of connection is, especially in terms of the music history elements that the students are studying in class. It's interesting because I chose Susan Tracy's book, The Music of Christendom, as one of the texts for our curriculum here. And I think some people might think, well, that's not really a high school textbook exactly. But the reason I loved her approach is because even if it wasn't a piece of music that was written for the liturgy that she is discussing within the context of the text, it's always related to Christian culture and the development of the Christian culture. And so spending time with Dido and Aeneas while the students are reading the Aeneid can be particularly helpful for that student in making some of these connections with history. Our students also learn about how the church has been fundamental in the development of many different areas in the Western culture of music, in art, in the university system, in the sciences. And so our conversations in our seminars in the Catholic culture class often bring those points of integration. I think the last place that I also find particularly meaningful is, and that I love participating in, is that our physics teacher always has an acoustics unit. And so I bring my monochord to the physics class, and we have a great conversation about the harmony of the spheres in the context of the physics class. So we find those moments of integration, and we have a community of scholars that loves to discover those moments.
Yeah. So I'm wondering if you could give a little bit of advice to parents or musicians or teachers out there that would like for the Catholic identity of their schools to be more vibrant and faithful, what are some changes that they could advocate for in a regular, say, diocesan or parish school?
This is an excellent question, and I think fundamental to the revitalization of Catholic schools across the country. The first is that we should never discount the sacramental imagination of a child. Children love those moments of procession, of holding candles, of doing something unusual. And we can play on that, actually. We can play on that to our advantage in the restoration of culture. So if you have the opportunity to celebrate Mass for Candlemas, you should do a procession. You'll have to decide what age group can hold the lit candles, and then the other ones will have to have unlit candles if you're in an elementary school. But they love that, and they don't forget those moments. They'll ask you right away the next year, are we going to do that thing with the candles again? Right? Even in second grade, they'll ask that question, what year do I get to hold a lighted candle? And they will be delighted to learn there's music that goes with that. If we present it in that beautiful way, oh, this is what we sing while we're doing this procession. And now you have an opportunity to introduce them to proper texts, right? The liturgical texts in the liturgical books. Moments where we can connect the liturgy to paraliturgical acts. So for instance, it's particularly apt at this time of the year, burying the Alleluia. I loved that. I buried the Alleluia with my second graders every year at the school I was at previous to here. And then we would invite the grade levels that were higher to come and watch and participate in this. And so they would remember, oh, I remember when we buried the Alleluia. Oh, she got a bigger one this year than we used to have. But anything that has something that they can see, touch, taste, smell, really contributes to that delight that a child can experience in contact with the sacred liturgy. And I think we need to foster those moments. They will approach them with so much joy. The other element, and I mentioned this already briefly, is that as the person choosing the music in particular, that we really do find a focus on the liturgical texts. And this can be simple as introducing communion antiphons for your students. Now, you do have to practice it ahead of time, but children are capable of singing those chants, even if they're in the simpler forms. My daughter in fourth grade on Friday sang a Gregorian communion at their school. And so maybe a school is not ready for that yet, but a fourth grader is certainly capable of doing so. It's also recognizing that these students are capable of doing things that are beautiful, not just things that are childish. And so making a distinction about being childlike or childish. We don't have to reduce the kind of music that we use, but call them to the experience of something beautiful. And then that sacramental imagination is a means by which we can call them towards it.
Thank you so much. This is really inspirational. And I hope that parents, administrators, teachers, musicians can find ways to exercise their imagination to accomplish excellent things for the church and for the good of souls. And you're a great model of that. So thank you so much, Alexis.
Thank you. Keep praying for us, please.
We hope you've enjoyed listening to Square Notes, the Sacred Music Podcast with Dr. Jennifer Donaldson-Nowicka. For more information about this episode, sacred music resources, or upcoming events, visit our website at sacredmusicpodcast.com. You can subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, or your favorite podcast app. If you enjoy our podcast, please write us a review on iTunes. This improves our iTunes ranking and helps others find out about the podcast. The music you heard at the beginning of this episode is Hec Dies by William Byrd, sung by the London Oratory Schola Cantorum Boys Choir, directed by Charles Cole from the CD Sacred Treasures of England. The music at the conclusion of this podcast is from the Prelude and Fugue in G Major, BWV 550 by Johann Sebastian Bach, performed by Jennifer Donaldson-Nowicka. We look forward to having you join us next time, and until then, may we sing the praise of His glory.